First contact goes wrong. The bridge of the Catherian dreadnought Shadow of Dominion buzzed with quiet efficiency as Fleet Commander Zareth Cole reviewed the tactical display one final time. 300 vessels strong, his armada represented the largest expeditionary force the Catherian Empire had deployed in over 50 years. Their mission was simple: locate and subjugate the primitive civilization detected in the Sol system. Zareth's 4 eyes focused on the blue-green world rotating slowly on his screen. Earth, the natives called it. Intelligence reports suggested a species that had barely achieved nuclear fission and primitive rocket technology. Perfect candidates for integration into the Empire's vast network of client species. All fleet elements report ready. Commander, announced his tactical officer, Lieutenant Vex Thallon. The younger Catherian's neck ridges displayed the confident purple coloration typical of their warrior caste. Planetary scans confirm a single inhabited world. Approximately 8 billion individuals scattered across 7 major land. Zareth nodded approvingly. The numbers matched their projections perfectly. A sizable population for labor and resource extraction, but technologically inferior enough to ensure easy conquest. The Catherian way had proven successful across 43 previous systems. Arrive in overwhelming force, demand immediate surrender, and integrate the survivors into the Empire's economic machine. Signal the fleet to assume standard intimidation formation, Zareth commanded. Broadcast the surrender demand on all electromagnetic frequencies. Let's get this over with quickly. The massive Catherian vessels arranged themselves in a threatening hemisphere around Earth's orbital space. Each ship was a kilometer long and bristled with weapons that could glass entire continents. The sight had never failed to produce the desired psychological effect on primitive species. Zareth straightened his impressive 3-meter frame and activated the communication array. The surrender demand had been refined over centuries of conquest, translated into the mathematical concepts that any spacefaring species should understand. Inhabitants of the 3rd planet, his voice boomed across the radio spectrum. I am Fleet Commander Zareth Cole of the Catherian Empire. Your species has been selected for integration into our galactic civilization. Cease all military activities immediately and prepare for occupation. Resistance will result in planetary bombardment. You have one of your solar rotations to respond. The bridge fell silent except for the gentle hum of ship systems. Standard protocol suggested most primitive species required several hours to overcome their initial panic and mount some form of response. Usually terrified pleas for mercy or desperate threats with their pathetic weapons. Exactly 47 seconds later, the communication console chirped with an incoming transmission. Catherian Fleet, this is Earth Traffic Control Center, Houston. We have you on scope and acknowledge your arrival in Sol System airspace. Be advised you are currently in violation of established shipping lanes between Earth and Luna. Please adjust your formation to grid reference. Tango 7 Alpha and stand by for approach clearance to diplomatic parking orbit. The voice was calm, professional, and completely unexpected. Zareth blinked all 4 eyes rapidly, a sign of extreme confusion among his people. Around the bridge, his crew exchanged uncertain glances. Sir, whispered his navigation officer, did they just give us traffic control instructions? Before Zareth could respond, the transmission continued. Also, be advised that your vessel emissions are causing interference with our Mars cargo convoys. Please reduce your sensor output to standard diplomatic levels. Earth, control out. Lieutenant Thalen's neck ridges had shifted from confident purple to a worried orange. "Commander, I'm detecting massive electromagnetic activity from the planet's surface. And sir, ... He paused, studying his displays more carefully. "There are artificial structures throughout this entire system." Zereth leaned forward in his command chair, elaborate, orbital installations around the third planet. Would appear to be industrial facilities on the fourth planet. Mining operations in the asteroid belt. "Sir, there's a structure near the gas giant that's reading as larger than our flagship." The tactical display updated as more sensor data flowed in, and Zereth felt his confidence begin to evaporate. This wasn't a primitive world with early spaceflight. This was an established interplanetary civilization. Massive space elevators stretched from Earth's surface into orbit, their tops crowned with sprawling orbital cities. The moon's surface was dotted with domed settlements and industrial complexes. Shipping lanes filled with vessels moved between planets in carefully orchestrated patterns. Most disturbing of all, sensor readings indicated defensive platforms, positioned at strategic points throughout the system. "Commander," his science officer reported, her voice barely above a whisper. "Preliminary population estimates for this system exceed 12 billion individuals. Most are located off-world. Their industrial capacity appears to rival our home system." The communication array activated again, and the same calm voice addressed them. "Catharian vessels, Earth control here. We've cleared diplomatic parking orbit. Papa 7 for your fleet. Please follow navigation beacon, Whiskey 4, and maintain standard peaceful approach protocols. Ambassador Martinez is en route to Lunar Station for preliminary discussions. ETA 40 minutes. Also, our engineering teams are curious about your propulsion systems. Would you be interested in a technical exchange?" Zereth stared at the communication console as if it had personally insulted his ancestors. In 43 previous conquests, no species had ever treated the arrival of a Catharian battle fleet as a routine administrative matter. No one had ever offered to compare technologies. "Sir," Lieutenant Thalen spoke carefully, "our sensor arrays are detecting energy signatures from 17 different defensive installations. Some of these weapons appear to be ... significant. Define significant. The platform orbiting their moon is generating power readings consistent with a planetary bombardment capability. And Commander, there are similar installations around each planet. This isn't a primitive species. They've militarized their entire system." Through the viewport, Zereth could see Earth rotating peacefully below them. From this distance, it looked exactly like the primitive world they'd expected to find. But his instruments told a different story. This was a civilization that had quietly built an interplanetary empire while the rest of the galaxy wasn't paying attention. The communication array crackled to life once more. "Catharian fleet, please be advised that you're currently in the approach path for our Jupiter mining convoy. 17 heavy cargo vessels inbound from the outer system. Recommend you maintain current altitude and bearing until they pass. Should be about 15 minutes. Zereth watched through his tactical display as a formation of massive human vessels emerged from behind Jupiter. Each ship was easily the size of a Catharian cruiser, but clearly designed for industrial purposes rather than warfare. The casual efficiency with which they moved spoke of decades of experience with large-scale space operations. "How long," Zereth asked quietly, "have they been operating at this scale?" His science officer consulted her instruments. Based on the construction patterns and orbital mechanics, I'd estimate at least 50 Earth years for the major installations. Possibly longer. 50 years, while the Catherian Empire had been focusing on consolidating their existing territories and managing their client species. Humanity had been quietly expanding throughout their solar system. They'd built cities, industries, and defensive networks that rivaled anything in Catherian space. "Commander," the tactical officer's voice carried a note of alarm. "I'm detecting multiple vessels changing course toward our position. Configuration suggests escort formation rather than attack pattern, but some of these ships are heavily armed." On the main screen, a dozen human vessels approached in a textbook diplomatic escort formation. They were clearly military designs, sleek and purposeful, but they maintained a respectful distance that suggested ceremony rather than threat. Communication array activated again, but this time the voice was different. Older, more authoritative. "Fleet Commander Zareth Cole, this is Admiral Marcus Rivera of Earth Defense Command. Welcome to the Sol System. I understand this may not be quite what you were expecting to find." There was something in the human's tone that suggested he understood exactly what the Catherian fleet had come here to do. Zareth felt a chill run down his spine. "We've prepared appropriate accommodations for diplomatic contact," Admiral Rivera continued. "I think you'll find we have much to discuss. With your permission, I'd like to invite you and your senior staff aboard Lunar Station. It's neutral ground, and the coffee is excellent." Coffee. Zareth had no idea what that meant, but the casual confidence in the human admiral's voice was unmistakable. These weren't the terrified primitives his intelligence reports had described. These were equals, possibly superiors, and they were treating his invasion fleet like visiting dignitaries. "Sir," Lieutenant Thalon whispered, "what are your orders?" Zareth looked out at the bustling solar system surrounding his fleet. Ships, moving between planets like leaves on the wind. Orbital cities that sparkled with the light of millions of inhabitants. Industrial operations that had turned entire asteroids into raw materials. This wasn't conquest territory. This was someone else's established empire. "Signaled the fleet to stand down from attack formation," he said quietly. "Accept their invitation for diplomatic contact. And Lieutenant," "Yes, Commander." "Start preparing." A very different report than the one we planned to send home. Earth shows its hand lunar station was unlike anything Zareth had ever seen. The massive orbital facility stretched 4 kilometers, its rotating sections generating artificial gravity through centrifugal force. Docking bays accommodated vessels from dozens of different human factions, while vast, transparent sections offered breathtaking views of Earth hanging in the void below. As Zareth and his diplomatic team were escorted through the station's corridors, he couldn't help but notice the casual efficiency of everything around him. Humans of various ages and ethnicities moved with the practiced ease of people who had been working in space for generations. Children played in low-gravity recreation areas, while their parents conducted business in nearby commercial zones. Impressive, isn't it? Admiral Rivera walked beside them, a man in his 60s, with graying hair and kind eyes that nonetheless missed nothing. "We've been building Lunar Station for 40 years. Started as a simple research outpost and just kept growing. Your intelligence reports described humanity as a primitive species," Zareth said carefully. "Single planet, early space flight, nuclear weapons." Rivera chuckled. "Well, that was true enough 50 years ago. We've been busy since then." They entered a large conference room with a stunning view of Earth. The blue-green world dominated one wall. its surface traced with the lights of cities and the geometric patterns of orbital elevators. Captain Sarah Chen was already waiting, along with several other humans in various uniforms. Commander Zareth Rivera said, "I'd like you to meet some of our department heads. Captain Chen, you've already spoken with. She runs our traffic control operations. Dr. Amanda Foster heads our Xenological Research Division. Commander James Park manages our Deep Space Monitoring Network." Zareth's translator worked overtime as introductions were made. Each human seemed to represent a different aspect of their civilization's capabilities. Traffic control suggested massive commercial operations. Xenological research implied they'd been studying alien species. Deep space monitoring meant they'd been watching the galaxy for decades. "You've been monitoring galactic communications," Zareth stated, rather than asked. Dr. Foster nodded. "For about 30 years now. We picked up Catherian transmissions when we first started building our deep space arrays. Took us a while to decode your languages, but we've been following your expansion across the local sector. Then you knew we were coming." "Oh yes," Admiral Rivera said, settling into his chair. "We've been tracking your fleet since you left Catherian space 6 months ago. Gave us time to prepare appropriate welcome protocols." Zareth felt his understanding of the situation shift once again. Not only were humans far more advanced than expected, they'd been watching his people for decades. They'd prepared for this encounter while his intelligence division remained completely unaware of their capabilities. "Why didn't you make contact before now?" Lieutenant Thalen asked. "If you've known about us for 30 years, ... Double quotes, Captain Chen answered this time. "We learned early on that most galactic civilizations follow a pattern of aggressive expansion. Conquer first, ask questions later. We decided it was better to achieve strategic parity before announcing ourselves." "Strategic parity," Zareth repeated. "Show him," Admiral Rivera said quietly. The conference room's holographic display activated, showing a 3-dimensional map of local space. Sol System appeared at the center, but it wasn't alone. Dozens of other star systems were marked with human symbols, connected by shipping routes and communication networks. "Proxima Centauri was our first colony," Dr. Foster explained. "Wolf. 359 came next, then Barnard's Star. We've got established settlements in 22 systems now, with exploration teams pushing further out every year." Zareth stared at the display in shock. While his intelligence services had been cataloging primitive species for potential conquest, humanity had been quietly building an interstellar civilization. They'd gone from nuclear weapons to faster than light. Travel in less than 50 years. How was all he could manage. Commander Park leaned forward. "Necessity, mostly. Once we realized we weren't alone in the galaxy, and that most of our neighbors were aggressively expansionist empires like yours, we had 2 choices: hide and hope you'd overlook us, or develop the capability to defend ourselves. We chose option 2, Rivera added. Turned out humans are pretty good at rapid technological development when properly motivated." The holographic display shifted, showing technical specifications for human vessels. Their ships were smaller than Catherian designs, but far more advanced. Fusion drives that could achieve previously impossible speeds. Defensive systems based on principles Zareth didn't recognize. Weapons that seemed to bend the laws of physics. "You're faster than light technology," Zareth said, studying the display. "It's not based on spatial folding like ours. Dimensional phasing," Dr. Foster explained. "We discovered it accidentally while researching quantum communications. Turns out space-time has more layers than anyone realized." We just learned to slip between them and your defensive platforms. Gravitational manipulation, Commander Park said proudly. We can generate localized gravity wells strong enough to deflect projectiles or trap hostile vessels. Very effective against conventional weapons. Zareth was beginning to understand the magnitude of his miscalculation. Humanity hadn't just achieved technological parity with the Catherian Empire. In many areas, they'd surpassed it. Their expansion was methodical rather than aggressive. Their technology innovative rather than traditional. Their strategic thinking decades ahead of his own intelligence services. You could have destroyed our fleet the moment we arrived, he said quietly. We could have, Admiral Rivera agreed. But why would we want to? You haven't actually attacked anyone. Your surrender demand was more theatrical than threatening. We figured it was better to talk first and shoot later, if necessary. Most species respond to our arrival with either terror or desperate aggression, Lieutenant Thalen observed. Captain Chen smiled. Most species probably don't have gravitational mines positioned throughout their system and stealth. Ships shadowing your fleet since you crossed our outer perimeter. Zareth's neck ridges flushed a pale yellow with embarrassment. You've been monitoring our vessels this entire time. Standard procedure, Commander Park said apologetically. We don't get many visitors, so we tend to be cautious. Your ships are quite impressive, by the way. Our engineers are genuinely interested in your whole metallurgy. The conversation continued for several hours as both sides shared information about their respective civilizations. Zareth learned that humanity had developed rapidly, not through conquest but through cooperation between their various nations and factions. They'd faced the challenge of potential galactic threats by uniting their species around common goals of exploration and defense. More importantly, they'd done it all while remaining essentially peaceful. Their expansion was driven by curiosity and resource needs rather than territorial ambition. Their military capabilities existed solely for defensive purposes. They'd built one of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy without conquering a single world. As the meeting drew to a close, Admiral Rivera made an unexpected proposal. Commander Zareth, I'd like to suggest something that might benefit both our species. You came here expecting to find conquest targets, but instead you found equals. Rather than viewing this as a failure, consider it an opportunity. What sort of opportunity? Cultural and technological exchange. Your people have mastered interstellar logistics and planetary integration. We've developed innovations in faster van-like travel and defensive systems. Instead of one species conquering the other, both species could learn and grow. Dr. Foster added, we've been isolated for too long, developing in a bubble of our own making. Contact with your civilization could accelerate our growth exponentially, and perhaps our technologies could help your people expand more efficiently. Zareth considered this carefully. The Catherian Empire had grown through conquest and subjugation, but their expansion had slowed in recent decades. Internal conflicts and the challenge of managing dozens of client species had stretched their resources thin. Perhaps there was another way. My superiors will expect a conquest report, he said finally. The Empire doesn't easily accept failure. Then don't report failure, Rivera suggested. Report success. You've made contact with an advanced civilization willing to establish diplomatic relations with the Catherian Empire. You've identified potential allies rather than subjects. That's not failure, that's strategic thinking. And if my government decides to send a larger fleet to conquer humanity by force? The humans exchanged glances, and Zareth caught a glimpse of something harder beneath their friendly, diplomatic facade. "Commander," Captain Chen said quietly, "we've had 30 years to prepare for that possibility. We've turned our entire civilization into one enormous defensive network. Any attack on humanity would be met with a response that would make your government seriously reconsider its aggressive policies. But we'd prefer cooperation." Admiral Rivera added quickly, "War is expensive and wasteful. Trade and cultural exchange benefit everyone involved." As Zareth prepared to return to his flagship, he reflected on how completely his understanding of the situation had changed. He'd arrived expecting an easy conquest and discovered instead a potential partner. Humanity had achieved in 50 years what the Catherian Empire had built over 5 centuries, and they'd done it without conquering anyone. More importantly, they'd done it while remaining genuinely friendly and curious about other species. Even after being threatened with invasion, they'd responded with offers of cooperation and mutual benefit. Admiral Zaruth said as they reached the docking bay, "I believe our species have much to learn from each other." "I think so too, Commander. Safe travels home, and when you're ready to continue this conversation, you know where to find us." As the Catherian fleet departed Sol System, Zareth began composing his report. He wouldn't describe a failed conquest. Instead, he'd report the discovery of humanity, a species that had achieved greatness through innovation and cooperation rather than conquest and subjugation. Perhaps it was time for the Catherian Empire to learn a different way of expanding. Across the galaxy, humanity had shown that strength didn't always come from conquest. Sometimes it came from the courage to build something better. The galaxy had just become a much more interesting place. Asterisk.